Just F it.
Hi, I'm Romy, an identity coach helping others who struggle with their sexual identity and families of queer youth find their path of understanding and acceptance.
And I'm Carla, a mom empowerment coach empowering moms to own their new identities and motherhood journeys.
And together we are the EFF IT Madres. We are here to invite you guys into stories of some inspiring madres
who have changed their lives through an F it moment. So here we go. Just F it.
Hey everybody, happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It's been a minute.
It's been a hot minute. We are the EFF IT Madres. I'm Romy. This is Carla. And we are the EFF IT Madres. And we interview moms and their stories and their EFF IT moments. And we've been sharing them every Monday with you guys.
Aside from the last two.
We've been very busy. We've been working a lot. And the journey has been taking Carla and I to many different places. So we've been actually taking a good, healthy break to let life be life, right?
Yeah. It's always needed. We'll talk about that at the end of this. But yeah, we are interviewing a mom today, her name is Scarlett, and her EFF IT moment revolves around a divorce. Yep. So we're curious to hear how exactly that went down, as this is obviously something that, I think the statistic is 50% of married couples divorce. So yes. 50% of our listeners are probably divorced. So yes. I'm sure it's
50% of this podcast right here is divorce.
yeah. Not to make it funny, but yes, yes. Here we are. So we're gonna jump right in. We're gonna bring her in just a second. Okay, everyone, we have Scarlett Longstreet here with us, and we're gonna jump right into the first question. So, Scarlett, what shifted your mindset to say F it in the moment that you're gonna share with us today?
Okay, so I had basically made the conscious decision to stay in my marriage because of my children. Under any other circumstances, I would have exited my marriage. Like, it was a no-brainer. Like, no questions asked. Like, I would be out. So I had really resolved to stay until my kids were like 18. Like, I was going to do that very classic thing. Like, okay, graduation. Guess what? Mommy and daddy were getting a divorce. But for me, so my EFF IT moment really came when I realized that I wasn't being a good mom anymore in so many ways. Like, so I had the idea that like, oh, I can numb myself to this marriage, but still be present for my kids and still show up in other areas of life. And the reality is that you can't do that with anything. You can't shut down in one aspect and then continue to operate functionally in other areas of your life.
Nope.
So I had to say F it when I realized, oh, I actually can't stay in this marriage for my children because I am not, the whole point was to be a good mom, and I am not even being the mom that I want to be anymore. So that was a huge wake-up call for me.
How long were you guys married?
We were married, so we had our 10th wedding anniversary in March of last year, and we had been together for 14 years. Wow. So we got divorced right after our 10th anniversary, but we had been together for 14 years.
And when did you sense that this was over?
Oh gosh, right before it began.
Yes.
Before it began. And I want to say that with compassion and with empathy for my ex-husband. I don't mean it in a hurtful way. I just mean it that there were definitely, we talk about our gut feeling, we talk about our intuition and all of that. There were definitely signs that maybe I wasn't doing the best thing for me and for him too, right? I'm sure, I would be curious to hear his take on that. So it's no slight to him, but that maybe, right, I knew certainly that I was not doing the right thing. So, right, 14 years ago.
Yeah. I told you at the beginning of this, I love that you're speaking on this. I have a lot of friends right now that are married for a very long time with multiple kids. And this is a very common struggle. And I almost feel like more permission needs to be given to people to walk away from their marriages. And I'm not trying to cancel marriages. I respect the commitment and I respect, but there are they're just miserable, and they're miserable for their kids, and they're miserable for their families. And so they're almost just like okay with keeping it together for the sake of that they're still married, but like nothing's working and everyone's unhappy, right? And so I love that you're sharing this, that you did say F it, and after such a long time you walked away. And I'm curious, like, what positive and negative things have happened now that you've learned about yourself?
Okay. So the negative thing, or I guess it actually is a positive, is a lot of people just like I'm sure what we all do in spaces with our girlfriends and our friends are right. We come to each other and we say like, hey, can I get out of this? Do I have reason enough to get out of this? Is my bad enough to leave? So, and I get that every day in my DMs, right? So, and first of all, we all know this, right? No one else can give you permission. Like my set of circumstances is so different from anybody else's. But so for me, and what I try to caution people, I guess, so a negative thing I learned, and it's not negative, is that you might think that you exit your marriage and oh my God, things are so great and so easy. And like, right, you were going to get rid, that marriage was what was crippling you. Right. And I exited my marriage and guess what? My life wasn't like sunshine and roses overnight. Um, and here's the thing, I have heard from women where like that was the case, right? They left their marriage and they'll probably be like, this was the best thing I ever did. I don't know, like, yeah, it was like a really hard thing that I did. And it was really painful and it's a tragedy. And things are still hard in different ways. So that was something that I learned, right? Like that a divorce isn't like a quick fix, that I was divorced in my marriage and I still have mental health issues outside of my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But the positive that I learned was that like I can take ownership of my life. And I know, and you guys know because you ladies know because you're strong women and moms, is that like, right, there is nothing that I'm not gonna do for my kids, and that I will always be okay for my kids, and I can be okay for my kids when I'm not okay in the worst set of circumstances, right? So all of that like kind of cliche stuff that you hear about inner strength, that's all true.
Yeah, one of my really good friends, she's like, I see all you, because I'm divorced and have been dating and raising my daughter, and my dating life and my life since leaving her father hasn't been a beautiful beautiful journey, right? As Carla knows, it's been a very challenging one. I wouldn't even say that like comparing being married or this life one was better or not better, like at Carla's face. But it wasn't like I got divorced and then like everything was better. So I appreciate you saying that. It's been a journey of self-discovery, honestly, since leaving. And it's been an identity crisis and a mental health crisis, and got me in therapy. And why was I even in those marriages, right? And like it took me down a journey of really figuring out where I played a role in all of this, right? But my friend sees some of us divorced women and she's like, that doesn't look fun. I just don't know that I want to leave because like that doesn't even look fun.
Yeah, so when I tell people like, hey, this didn't fix my life, I don't mean to, well, I don't ever want to impact people one way or the other,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to sway people. But I don't mean it to discourage people from divorcing. I just want people to understand that the kind of idea like the grass is greener, like, yeah, you're trading hard for hard.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um,
Good one.
some hard is worth it though.
Yes.
Some hard isn't soul crushing. Some hard is like, oh yeah, this is difficult, but it's not killing me.
Yes.
Like actually killing me. I'm not at home feeling, like, God, I don't know if I can do this for another day, another year, another lifetime, right? So yeah, it's just still really challenging.
Yeah.
But
No, I love you saying that, trading the hard for hard. Both are going to be hard, but what hard isn't going to like kill you? That's a nice way, a simple way to kind of like look at it.
Yeah, and I would assume a big part of that hard is like no one goes into marriage like being like, well, I got an out, like I don't think that is usually people's like perspective when they get into marriage. So then when that does happen, I don't know if this is correct. I'm not divorced, so I can't say, but I'm imagining like I would think if that happened, I'd feel like I was a failure in that relationship. I also would be like, dang, I followed in my parents' footsteps and I got divorced, and like what a shit, you know what I mean? Like I feel like that's probably a big part of what I mean, you guys can tell me that you feel when you get divorced, like almost like it was a failure, right?
So, one of the really positive perspective shifts that I've had is divorcing has really expanded how I look at relationships.
Mhm.
I think, of course, well, one, we're socialized to believe that a divorce is a failure, but the truth is about relationships is that there's two outcomes, right? They go on forever or they end. And there was so much that thinking of divorce or any relationship as a failure if it ends really limits you from seeing so much of the good
Amen.
that came from it.
Yeah.
Like relationships aren't just good if they go on forever.
Yep.
Like I have friendships that didn't last forever,
Yes.
but like I act so fondly on them
Mhm.
for the season. I hate that word.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
season. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
I have friends with in college and I'm not like, "Oh my god, like we're not still friends, so what a waste." Like it's actually a waste to spend your life in a relationship just so it doesn't end. Just so you don't have to say, "Oh, we failed."
Yeah.
Um but there is so much value in my marriage. So I don't look at it as a failure at all. And that's like really controversial. You talk about it not being a failure on the internet and people like lose their minds.
I mean, I
Um
agree with you. I think every person, I've been married 3 times. I mean, I'm really not getting it right, but like everything has been such a beautiful growth and opportunity for me. And I did take something from each relationship. I don't look at myself, Carla knows this, as a failure as well. I don't even think that I'm never going to find love or any of that. I just look at this incredible journey I've been on, and it's been hard, right? And it's made me the woman I am. And I love more women speaking up, sharing it, being on social media, being a presence, because it is a refreshing way to see these conversations or see your journey, because some of us would grow up seeing our parents tell us that that's a failure, or that we have to do this, or we don't want to become our parents, and we're so crippled, right, by not being what our parents were or doing what our parents did. And we're our own people on our own journey. And I love that you said that about friendships, because it's so true. So why wouldn't that be the same with like relationships, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I like even just hearing that you were married 3 times, I have a non-reaction to like
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Like when people are so hard on J-Lo, even right, like just dragging her off the coals, like who cares? Big deal. Like, oh my gosh, she loved somebody so much that she wanted to commit her life, and then they realized that it wasn't going to work out. Oh no,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. No,
it's just,
I love you saying that. And I connect with her whole story out there right now, just being somebody like that, you know, who's gone through that. I was just publicly engaged, and that didn't even happen in a day. You know, things happen. But I think there's beauty in being able to like not fall into the brokenness of it, right? And not allow that to be what does define failure and broken pieces to you. So your shift on it is really, it's refreshing. Thank you.
You kind of touched on, you basically answered the question that I was going to ask, which is like, what other new perspectives have opened up? But aside from the perspective of not looking at divorce as a failure, what other things have you looked at differently now that you are stepped out of, that marriage?
it's just such a total, yeah, when you build your life around an entire person, when you're like trying to like disentangle it just shifts everything, right? So it has shifted really for me what I'm capable of. You're forced to figure things out and you're forced to dream in new ways. Which some days it can be too hard to dream, right? And you're not dreaming, you're just surviving.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it's really shifted for me like what my future will be, which is also very scary. It's very nice to kind of know what you can expect, give or take, for the rest of your life. Okay, I'm married and that's it. I'm going to slap the table on it and it's done, and I don't ever have to worry about like what I'm going to be doing in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So yeah, it's made me try kind of reckon with like, oh, what's possible for me vocationally.
Mm-hmm.
um, how am I going to support myself? How can I support my kids? All of that. So really divorce is just the first thing. That's the first thing that happens, and then after that every single aspect of your life changes.
Yes.
And you kind of have to go through each thing like, oh, what kind of parent am I when I'm parenting, even just by myself. So it changes everything.
It really does. You know, it's interesting because like my first divorces, I was not a mom, and the most recent one, it was with my daughter's dad. And you really do learn this new parenting style, right? You do learn so many new things on your own. And it's true, like the kind of parent I was married is very different than the kind of parent I've become being like a single mom, and there's so much to like learn from who you are kind of on your own that is interesting. But like, yeah, you don't know the future. I was reading this book recently that talked about two of the biggest like emotions that we have as people is fear and love. It's to love and it's like fear. And they just kind of work together, and those are the emotions, right? So you saying that like not knowing the future and stuff, there's that a fear base in not knowing it, right? And not knowing what to predict.
And I would always caution women and men too, anybody who's listening or reading my stuff or like whenever I was like, why am I in my marriage? To touch on what you said, it was always fear
Uh-huh.
based. And when you're doing something, when fear is your primary driver, like, why am I not leaving this marriage because of fear? Well, that's a really shitty motivator to stay in something, right? It's not because I am, deeply committed or deeply in love or
Right.
my needs are being fulfilled and I'm deeply fulfilling their needs and vice versa. No, it's just I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm scared about what comes next because I don't know if I step away from this how I will make it
Yes.
and all of those. So yeah, if you're writing it down and you're conflicted, it's like, oh yeah, why am I here? Why am I doing this thing? Why am I not doing this other thing that I want to do?
Right. And it's either you're there for love, for the love of it, right? Or you're there because you're scared. It's like these two very simple spaces to live in. I'm curious then, like, how did you talk yourself through any of the negative self talk and doubt to come out of this marriage? How did you get through that fear?
I feel like everything always goes back to like tropes and cliches, but like these very complex things and emotional experiences can really be reduced down to these kind of sayings. And it's like what I was doing wasn't working, right? I was miserable for so long in my marriage. And yeah, I had a ton of negative self talk. Can you support yourself? Can you do anything? Well, I don't know, but I do know that this isn't working. And I always want to tell people too, people are just really think of long-term relationships as like you start and you never stop.
Mhm.
People don't enter knowing that like you can pause. You can say you can leave room for growth with your spouse. You can say, and that's a scary thing,
Mhm.
right? That's a scary thing to say to your spouse because like the whole agreement is like, no, we're locked in. We're doing this
Yep.
forever.
Yep.
But I think a more open and honest space is to be like, wow, people change and maybe we should separate. People are scared to ask for a separation. They think like once I ask for a separation, just like once they got married, right?
Mhm.
There's no going back.
Mhm.
I know people who have separated and found their way back to each
Yeah.
other. Um, is that ideal? Is it simple? Is it clean? No, it's not. But I just want to like push people to like really be more expansive of how they're looking at long-term relationships because we already know that they're not easy or simple or um so just because you decide to do something doesn't mean that you can change your mind.
Right.
That
Right.
you can't change your mind.
So on your way through this decision, kind of talking yourself through this, did you give yourself the freedom and the space to know that like you were allowed to change your mind?
Totally. So like if I and like well that is I could if I was feeling like oh no, I made a mistake. People are always like, how do you know you didn't make a mistake? Well, if you do think you make a mistake, you could go and you could say, "Hey, I made a mistake." And then that the onus is on the other person, right? The onus would have been on my spouse to then say, "You know what? I'm willing to work on this."
Mhm.
Or, "No, actually, I'm done." Um, but people are so scared about making a
Yep.
mistake
Yep.
that it
Yeah.
keeps them from changing their life for the better. So, yeah, for me, had I have been feeling like, "No, I really messed up," I could have just gone back and said, and that's about being adult
Yeah.
and being an adult and being mature and owning your decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what would have happened if I would have felt that way, but yeah, you do have to be prepared for whatever outcome.
Yeah.
I'm sure a big element of that though for a lot of women and men is when you admit that you've made a mistake, it's not even between, yes, between you and the spouse, but everybody else. Like, what is everybody else gonna say? And which is probably a big reason why a lot of people stay, is because they don't want to disrupt everybody and everything else, which is really fucked, because they're not living those people's lives, they're living in your life, their lives.
Absolutely. I mean, especially I talk about women who are leaving a quote unquote good man, right? When there are situations, one, it's hard to leave anyways when there's situations of abuse, and whether they be financial, physical, emotional. But good luck leaving a good man.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We're hard on women, like even with emotional abuse, it's like, well, he doesn't hit you. So, right? Like kind of like our bar
It's
is
so low.
is there. It's like, oh, well, you're not really being abused because you're not being hit, right? Like emotional. So we make it really hard for people to just end marriages in general. And it's like, I don't mean to minimize like the gravity of the decision, but it actually doesn't need to be that serious. Like, hey guys, it's not that serious. Like, you can just decide that this isn't a good fit. And of course there's a lot that goes into that, and it's very complicated, especially when you have children involved. But
I'm reading this book. It's my friend who's going through this right now handed me a book called Conversations with God. And it's not necessarily like a fully Christian book. It's just conversation with God, the God in you. And there's some like a chapter in it about marriage and about how you can. And it was this whole conversation that almost gave her like permission through sort of a spiritual place, that like the idea that we've created around marriage is sometimes hurting people, right? Or it's like we've created it in a way that like people are having affairs left and right. People are cheating. Like something isn't working, right? Something isn't working because of how we've created this whole strong, strict rules around it. And I think we're evolving more, and people are sharing more, and people are writing and talking about it more, because people, you say certain things on the internet, right? You say it and people are like, what, you can't say that. But if we talk about it more, even the woman we had on with her open marriage, right, who just wrote her book about open marriage, and they've been together forever, just new ideas around how marriages can look for each person, I think is really beautiful, because it isn't a one recipe for all. It doesn't work one way for everyone, and just people exploring what their marriage is going to look like or not look like, or like you said, taking a pause, taking a break, like things that are okay to do that like for so long nobody was talking about.
yeah, people don't even realize, even when I say like a pause or a break, everyone can negotiate what that looks like. You just like you can negotiate whether or not you have an open marriage, just like cheating to me. If I asked you three or you two,
Yeah.
each of us would give a different answer
Yes.
about what cheating
Yes.
is, right? Like what classifies as cheating? Going to lunch with a coworker versus like actual like
Right.
P&B, right? That's the terms of every relationship are up for negotiation between two people.
Yes.
Yeah. So just like an open marriage or, monogamish, or like even a separation, like just because you're separated doesn't mean you need to be dating other people. That's for you and your spouse to negotiate, right? Your own boundaries. There's no rules. That's another thing I tell people. There's no rules. You get to make them.
You do.
Yeah. I have a client, and she's an older woman, and she and her husband have decided after like 20 years of marriage, and they have 2 children, to separate, but they're not, but it's not because there's like they don't love each other. It's just they want to explore. They want to explore. They want to like dive into what they want to do a little bit. They live in different places, but they come back together for the kid. But like there's still this very harmonious connection between them, but they're not divorced. Every time I ask them like, so are you guys, like gonna, and she's like, I don't know. It's right now this is working. So it was like, interesting. So yeah, everybody has it can be up to you. There's no rule book. It's just unfortunately like what has been put out there in society has made people feel bad to even go outside of that. But it's really up to us. It's our fucking lives.
I mean, I'm over here living with my ex-fiance, doing life with her. We live together. We do life. She is co-parenting with me. We are not getting married. We are not in a romantic relationship. People are so confused right now when they see us together. And I'm like, it's my life. This works for us, whether it makes sense to you or not. We've decided to do life together, but we aren't romantic. We were able to stop that journey of our relationship because it wasn't working and transition into this. And we co-parent with my daughter's dad. We all spend holidays together. We all do things together, and his wife. And whether it makes sense to anybody, I really don't care. My daughter is loved and has a whole unit of people that show up for her, right? It just doesn't look very traditional. And I think that's becoming more common.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing that we can learn from like the queer community in general is that they are so much better at building lives that really work for them
Mm-hmm.
outside of, you know, kind of like the societal standards and pressure. And like, but that's the beauty of it, because they've been shunned, there's discrimination, so they've had to figure it out. And right, so like queer couples can typically transition into much healthier relationships post breakup because they're not living by this set of rules. People are horrified when they almost want your divorce to go bad in a heterosexual relationship. Like they don't understand. It's really hard for people to even accept that me and my ex-husband, right, are still around each
Yeah,
other, and
same.
we're getting along. And it's just, you just don't see it, you aren't given examples of it, so it feels, it's very, people are weird, like, no, 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 you should be fighting, this should be bad. But when it's not, you, people don't know what to do with it.
They do. I mean,
Mhm.
my ex-husband and I, we do our holidays together. I just did his fiance's makeup for their wedding. Like, I love her. She's like part of our journey. And when we show up to my daughter's school, there's like this tribe, and people are just kind of like, "What is going on?" I'm like, yeah, we're all here. Like, it's just one big happy family. And coming from the queer community, you're right. I think there is that beautiful transition, and they've already been different and stood out. So creating those relationships does look different, and it is, but I think it needs to be more open, right? To everybody being able to create whatever those relationships, or co-parent, sometimes co-parent. Like I always say, my daughter's getting the best between her dad and I, because the way we co-parent together is so awesome. And it's so much better than the way we were married together. So she's like
Yeah.
really getting the best of the two of us in this relationship.
Yeah. I want to jump into the next one. So, how then would you describe yourself, Scarlett, now versus the woman that was in that marriage?
So much of it is tied to, you know, because your moms, and it can be hard to parse out necessarily, because the further I get out of like being postpartum, and what, but for me it took like my kids, my littlest, my twins, to be 4 before I even really felt like I was getting back to myself, like a full 4 years until I really felt like comfortable in figuring out who I was again,
Mhm.
my interests, my identity, my style, my aesthetic, all of that. It took years and years. So I will say it's kind of, it's just a continuation of that, I think, post marriage. Right, figuring out who I am outside of my marriage, but it's also closely tied to like as your kids age, right? And you're just given more freedom to evolve
Yes.
and get back to yourself. So both of those things do it as your kids age, and then like also right when you find yourself out of a long-term relationship, just having the time to really explore what I want and what I need, has been really transformative.
I think you nailed it with like time, right? As moms, I think all of us, once there's like a minute to breathe and we can take some time for ourselves, right? And we're out of that like new baby and that new, right? Like the consuming of us. I've seen that with Carla and I in our journeys. Like, we're like, oh yeah, me. Oh yeah, I can do something for me. I
Yeah.
can be me. I can figure me out again. And as new moms, and you with twins, I can't even imagine, right? Like that consuming of you, that's double at the same time. Like, it really is, once you get that minute. And as they get older, like any mom listening, that's like, as they get older, it gets easier in a way that like you do have more time for you and to explore your identity and who you are. And I feel like it's a forever evolving, at least it is for me, like journey, and I feel like our kids continue to teach us in different seasons, like who we are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, my last question to you then would be, what is your message then for your children and, anyone listening from this whole EFF IT moment of yours?
So a thing that was really helpful for me, and you've probably heard it before, is like you're told to ask yourself if if your child came to you and brought the problem that you're having to you, what would your advice be to them?
Mhm.
Right? So if my daughter, any of them came to me and said, "Hey, I'm really unhappy and I'm in my marriage dissatisfied," but you could do it with anything, right? You could be like, "I don't know about my your daughter comes to you about their career or
Yeah.
whatever." Like, what would I do? Well, what I would do if my daughter came to me is I would say, "Oh, well then we have to get you out.
Yeah.
We have to help get you to a place where you're full of contentment and happy, and right, that's what we should prioritize. Let's figure that out." But I did not we don't offer ourselves that
Mhm.
same understanding. We don't extend ourselves that grace and that comfort and that support. Um so right, like, so what is it? So I guess I'm telling my kids to think of themselves
Yeah.
as kids, and
Yeah.
but no, I guess what I'm telling my kids is that if they come to me with anything, I'm never going to be punitive, and I'm never going to say, "No, you stay. You stay put and you do your duty and you put a smile on your face." I'm like, "No, well, I'm here for you and we're going to figure this out together."
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's so sad that like I've known of people who have gone to their parents and been told the total
Yeah.
opposite, and how awful that is to just like imagine me saying that to my daughter now. I couldn't fathom
Mm-mm.
telling her to stick with it for the family or to stick with it because all eyes are on you. Like, oh my God, that's why I was watching actually an intervention where this one kid was an incredible, he built guitars. He just built them and he was super talented, but his parents were like, that's just a hobby. You need to be a doctor. And he ended up going down this meth addiction because he wasn't able to live his own life because his parents were like, oh, no, 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 you can't do that. You have to do this.
Yeah.
Like, that's fucked.
It's
And that's really
it's
common. I experienced that. I don't want to be, I don't, all that to say, like, so I hope to be that person for my children, the person who says, "Let's figure this out. Let's, let's solve this. Let's get you where you need to be." I did not really have that experience with my family.
yeah.
My,
I didn't either. I didn't either.
my
Yeah.
parents and my family very much wanted me to be with the good guy, very much. So my actual advice for anybody who's listening is that you might have to go alone.
Yes.
If you're waiting for
Mm.
everybody to be on your, for everyone to say you can do this, you have my permission, you're never going to get it. You are
Yeah.
Thank you for
never going
saying
to,
that.
Yeah. And
ever.
you don't need permission from anybody else. You've that's been a through line here. It's your life.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself that permission.
And it's hard because I waited. I wanted it from my therapist. I wanted it from my best friend. I wanted it from my mom.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
want, I wanted it from all these people to tell me that I could do it, that I was allowed to get a
You
divorce.
had to do it.
But I had to
Yeah.
do it. Nobody can tell you it, and also you're just not going to get it. There are going to be people who disagree with you. My
Yeah.
family. Anytime I get on the phone, that Alan, he's really incredible. We'll be talking about nothing. We're talking about Thanksgiving, and they're just like, I'm like, okay, yeah, we know. So that's just a thing that, yeah, you have to kind of like just be at peace with.
I love that you touched on that. Thank you. And that you talked about, giving yourself that permission because that's where it's going to come from in order to make something like that. I've just gotten out of something with somebody who really struggles mentally from trying to please parents, right? Like trying to please their parents. And it has been a sad, awful journey to watch somebody you love literally never step into their life
Yeah,
with
live for
for
themselves.
themselves. It's heartbreaking. It's a big part of mental health. It's a big problem with like suicide. It's a big problem with drug addiction. And people don't realize like people are locked into never living for themselves and living for their family or their parents. And it's heartbreaking. You lose yourself. You lose your life. And like I said, I just came through a relationship with a very close person in my life that it's like, just I want to shake that person, right? And be like, give yourself permission to be who you are. But like, I can't do it. We can't do it. You're so right. And I'm just grateful you said that because yeah, that's something that comes from within.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We hope that anyone listening, we always say this, if it reaches one person, as cheesy as it sounds, if it hits one person listening and helps them, then we're really grateful for it. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open to us reaching out to you through social media and like for your content and everything you're putting out
Thank you
there.
for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So my hub is kind of my Instagram at Scarlett Longstreet, just my name, and then I do have a Substack where I do all of my writing there, and you can find that through my Instagram. But that's scarlettlongstreet.substack.com. But my Instagram will really get you everything that you need.
Awesome.
Awesome.
All right. Well,
Okay, great.
this is where we're going to
Yeah.
say just F it. So we'll have you kick it off, then Carla, and then me, and then we'll put it all together.
Just up.
Just F it.
Just F it. Okay, everyone. We are finishing, right, this great episode. And like we said at the beginning of this, like we've been back after taking a few weeks off, right? And I'm going to share a little piece of mine, Carla, and then you share yours because this is kind of where I feel like we've been. But yeah, we are busy. And I think when Carla and I started this podcast, man, we had no idea what it was going to do for us. We really didn't. We said F it and we just signed up for starting a podcast, and then we signed up for coaching school, and like things just kept going and going and going. But this is the beautiful thing about an F it moment. I know we've talked about that, is that you just don't know what's going to come from saying F it sometimes. And by taking those big chances and starting something and where it's going to take you on your journey. And this has been such an incredible journey for me and has changed my life. Changed my life and like very massively changed my life.
Yeah.
But we're getting to a point where there's a lot of individual things we're working on and we're really busy and we're really passionate about. And I think both of us are gonna kind of follow those things right now and put some time and energy into those. And we made a promise to one another that when we started this, if at any point we needed a break or we needed to stop, that we were going to do that. And so I just want to honor both of us for acknowledging that, being honest about that, having a conversation about that, and saying, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? We're going to take a little break right
Yeah.
now, guys. We don't even know when we're coming back. We're just going to take a break. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't know if we don't know when, we don't know if, because of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen. And like Romy said, this has been it literally has been life changing for her, for myself. Like that's why this podcast is so dear to, I think, both of us, because of the fact that it really like following these effort moments are so important because they are life changing, and both of our lives have
Yeah.
changed just from saying effort
Same.
and starting this podcast. So I am so proud of us for how far we've gotten, and we've committed to this for over 2 years. But yes, we're at a point now where we've got a lot of things
Mm-mm.
that need our attention, and we don't ever want this to feel like it's a task or something we need to mark off our list, which had started to feel towards the end. And so we want to just take a pause and
Mm-hmm.
explore these other things, and if it's meant to be that we
Absolutely.
come back, then we come back, and if not, it'll probably evolve into something else. But
Yes.
we want to say, or at least I want to say, thank you so much to you, Romy, for like being
Same.
on this journey with me. It has been like I've learned so much from you and doing this with you, and I'm super grateful, and this will always be something that I hold so dear to my heart. And all of the people that have supported us and that have listened to us, like, thank you so much for that, because that has been what's kept
I
us
have my little
going, like
tears,
hearing our
Carla. You know
message.
I'm emotional. I'm an emotional person. So the
Ye-
tear is there right now because I'm
yeah.
just like, yeah, thank you to every mom and every woman who showed up for us and joined us and jumped on to be a part of this and promoted us and shared their stories that were very vulnerable with us. Look, I'm going to get emotional. It was just like, it was such a really beautiful journey.
Yeah. No, it really has been. And I would never change a thing. Like it was absolutely life transformative. It was just transformative for the both of
I
us.
didn't even know I'd start crying like
So
this.
we've yeah, we've definitely have yeah, it's been such a growing process for the both of
Yeah,
us.
I don't think either of us
So,
are the same person at all in any way when we got on that phone call to to
yeah.
start
How this even came up, I don't even remember, like, how it just
yeah, and
organically
this will
happened.
forever be a season of us saying just F it and learning to say just F it, and this will always be a reminder. So these will always be up there, you know, for people to listen and to watch and see and revisit, and what a really rad chapter of our lives, you know, to be in such an empowered space and have all these women on here. So we are finishing with an incredible you know, woman today sharing her story. We wanted to really end big and end on something powerful for you guys to listen to, and just thank you for like supporting us and showing up for us. But yeah, we were starting to feel like this wasn't getting our full attention, and we're not going to do anything. I know Carla and I, we're not going to do anything that feels half-assed. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was time.
Alright. Yeah, it was time. So here's us saying we're signing off as the F Madres for maybe for now, or I
Yeah.
don't know. We'll see. We'll see what life happens, like what life brings to us. But thank you so much for your support, and we're so forever grateful for
Carla,
that.
this is where we say just F it.
Yes. And remember,
Just F
just
it.
F it. All right. Bye, everyone.